What does it mean to be a competent communicator? In particular, think of what a competent communicator looks like or acts like in an interpersonal or group setting. That's what this video will focus on, defining what communication competence is and key factors in increasing communication competence. Competence means simply that someone or something is sufficient to meet one's needs. Synonyms include capable, appropriate, proficient, adequate, and suitable. Perhaps just as instructive is what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you have to be the best, outstanding, exceptional, impressive, or expert. Of course, if you are the best, outstanding, exceptional, impressive, or expert, that's great. You would have met the minimum qualifications for being competent. What does this mean when communicating with others? One definition from Dr. J. Dan Rothwell, currently a professor at Cabrillo College, is simple and straightforward. Communication competence means engaging in communication with others that is both effective and appropriate. Much of what I'm going to cover comes from Dr. Rothwell. He breaks down communication competence into 4 core concepts. The first 2 concepts are embodied in Rothwell's previous definition, effective and appropriate. Effective refers to if you were able to get your message across, while appropriate means you are able to follow the rules of the communication situation. Think about young children who often misspell words or have poor handwriting. If a child writes, "The cat put its paws there," putting an apostrophe in its and using the wrong spelling of there, oh, the grammar Nazi in me is cringing right now. We can probably figure out what she is saying. It's effective. But the spelling doesn't follow the rules or what is acceptable for the situation. It is not appropriate. Another example. A student is annoying me by constantly asking me when assignments are due, and those dates are clearly identified in the course schedule. I could just answer the question by giving the due dates, probably appropriate. But if my intent is to teach the students to be responsible and figure it out for themselves, then telling them the due dates would not be effective. I could also respond in other ways. Look at the schedule. Are you too lazy to check? If you check the schedule, you'll see the due dates are clearly spelled out in the due dates section. If you are having difficulty finding it, we can schedule a meeting. And I could choose not to respond, which is still a response. Some of these may be effective, but not overly appropriate. Are you too lazy to check? Gets the point across, but is a bit mean. Oh, believe me, I've seen and heard worse. Some would argue that no response is appropriate. Students should know where to look, and professors shouldn't have to coddle students who don't take the initiative to find it themselves. But is it effective? And don't forget that it matters what the situation is. Are we communicating via email, in front of a class of students, within earshot of others? What culture are we communicating in? The direct approach favored by many Western cultures is completely inappropriate in many Asian cultures. That connects to the third concept of communication competence being a matter of degree. Consider a continuum with deficient or highly incompetent on one side and proficient or highly competent on the other. In between, you could plot other levels of competence. Could someone be below expectations but not quite deficient, average? And could it differ by situation or skill set? In other words, you might be proficient in public speaking but lacking in interpersonal communication skills. Or you might be good at listening but not so great at getting to the point when offering your ideas. With this in mind, you can see that competency is really not a characteristic of the individual, but is applicable to a given situation. The final core concept is a we, not me orientation. As individuals, we tend to be egocentric. We view everything from our perspective, putting ourselves first. We often try to achieve our individual goals without even thinking about the others we interact with. Now, I'm not saying you should never put your needs first, but it's definitely inappropriate to ignore others and the impact of your communication on them. For example, if you are working with a group, you may have to reconsider your needs so that the group can meet their goals. We may need to be more group-oriented than individual-oriented. How do we become more competent at communicating? There are 3 interrelated factors: motivation, knowledge, and skill. Motivation is your general willingness or desire to do something. Another word for motivation might be commitment. You can be motivated to achieve something positive, reaching for the carrot, or to avoid something negative, keeping away from the stick. You may be committed or motivated to change your communication in a romantic relationship if you want to maintain or deepen it, or work harder to keep it together, avoiding a breakup. Motivation is usually thought of as internal, but could be affected by outside factors. Think about wanting to learn another language. What motivates you to learn the language or practice it? Might your motivation be that it is fun? Or that you want to be a role model for others? Or that being bilingual may result in a higher income? Or if you move to another country, you might be motivated to learn the language in order to survive or fit in. Knowledge is the information that you need to do what you want to do. If you wanted to learn another language, you'd need to gain the knowledge to do it. All the motivation in the world won't help you be competent if you don't have the knowledge. And skill refers to your ability to apply your knowledge. You could be motivated to learn another language and have the knowledge, but the words coming out of your mouth might be indecipherable. And as I said earlier, these three factors are interrelated. If you're motivated, you'll likely figure out a way to get the knowledge, and you'll practice, which will improve your skill. Knowledge may help with the skill, and if you are skilled, it's often easier to find the motivation to continue doing what you are doing. Two other factors to consider are sensitivity and ethics. The sensitivity aspect relates to the we, not me orientation we discussed earlier. This is your ability to identify other people's reactions and behave appropriately. You could think of this as a subset of the skill factor. It is a skill to determine what others are feeling: anger, conflict, frustration, contentment, and adjust your communication accordingly. And we should all behave ethically by being honest, fair, respectful, consistent, and responsible. The question you might need to ask yourself now is, are you a competent communicator? Not such an easy question to answer, right? If communication competence is really a matter of degree, then your answer likely is, it depends. Focusing on motivation, knowledge, and skills, and adding in sensitivity and ethics is the first step to developing communication competence.